I call the September 3rd, 2019 Finance Committee meeting to order at 6:45 p.m., and I would entertain motions for consideration of claims.
Your Honor, I move that we pay claims. I'm sorry about that. Brain fart. To be paid in the amount of $567,092.33. Manual checks in the amount of $25,034.80. Payroll liabilities for 8/16/2019 in the amount of $394,194.18 for a total of $986,321.31.
I would second that motion.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on these?
Your Honor, I do have one question. Mia, on page 9, there is a charge for $392,766.53 for straight stripe painting. Is that one project or is that several projects? Is that federal there?
Your Honor,
Yes.
it is one project. It's a project that's going on up at the airport, and it was approved in our budget this year. I think the amount was $500,000, but let me double check.
That makes sense.
It was approved for $512,410.
Thank you, ma'am.
And so are we going to be reimbursed for part of this? I know a lot of the airport projects, we end up just paying a percentage.
Yes, Your Honor, it is reimbursed. It's a grant reimbursed project.
Okay, so we're going to be paying that, but we'll be getting more money on it later.
Correct.
Okay, I remember that one now. And then I think you had a...
I did. Mia, on the Hawkins Incorporated on the chemicals for $7,566.93. I was just curious what that was for.
That is a common invoice that you'll see on most of the Finance Committee packets, and those are the chemicals that we used, or that are used up at the water treatment plant to treat our water.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other discussion?
That is all.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
I vote aye. Motion passes. Any other business?
I have nothing to add, Your Honor.
I have nothing, Your Honor.
Okay, we'll adjourn at 6:48 p.m. then.
We'll end the wrap-up.
I now call the September 3rd, 2019 regular meeting of the Riverton City Council to order at 7 p.m. The Pledge of Allegiance will be given to us by Councilman Hancock and the invocation by Councilman Bailey.
Our dearest Heavenly Father, thank you for the many blessings that we enjoy. Thank you for letting us live here in this wonderful town of Riverton and this great state of Wyoming. Please bless us in all that we do tonight and all that we do for the city. Please guide us in the things that we have to take care of tonight. May we open our minds to the responsibilities and all of the needs of the citizens of Riverton. Please bless all of those that serve us, the police, emergency responders, military participants, that they may all be safe in their job and help us to make Riverton and Wyoming a better place. And we ask these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Would the clerk please read, or would the clerk please conduct roll call?
Yes, Your Honor. Councilwoman Carla Borders.
Here.
Councilman Tim Hancock.
Here.
Councilman Mike Bailey.
Here.
Councilman Kyle Larson.
Here.
Councilman Corey Rhoda.
Here.
Mayor Richard Gard.
Here. The chair would entertain a motion to excuse Councilwoman Schatza.
So moved.
Second.
A second by Councilman Rhoda, or I have a motion by Councilman Rhoda and a second by Councilman Bailey. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. I declare a quorum is present. The chair would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented with the addition of an open container permit application submitted by Kent Watt.
Your Honor, I would move that we approve the agenda with the amended line item.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Bailey and a second by Councilman Hancock. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Anyone in the audience wishing to address the council regarding an item that is already on the agenda will be given the opportunity to speak later on. I would ask those individuals who wish to address the council at this time to approach the podium. Identify yourself for the record.
Hi there, I'm Jerry Kinsler, and I'm here to address council on an issue about the water feature in the city park. I'm a little confused. This isn't something I just dug up for something to do in my spare time. But on the 22nd of this month, we had a meeting here to see if people were in favor of continuing with the project or not. The project is to build a water feature, a focal point at the end of Main Street, to finish off the landscaping that we did when we redid Riverton's Main Street 13, 14 years ago. We do have the linings in the fountain pumps in the city's possession. We met with 28 people from the community, and they were almost all in favor, all but one. And my question is, after reading the article in the paper, it says that the mayor and the Parks Committee are not enthusiastic about the water feature. The question is, do we continue with this project? Do we tread on water or not have water in the park? We don't really know what we can legally do because it is the city's property. And for us to go ahead and fire up the community and get them enthused about it, I really think we're kind of just wasting time, your time and ours. But we would like to know, how you feel about this. At that meeting, we had the mayor, we had 2 people at least from the parks group. We had councilmen, and we answered all the questions we could. We had one person in our community who gave us $30,000 towards the project. And we don't know whether to say thanks but no thanks, where we're supposed to go from here. I do think it's still a viable item in the park. It's not a big mound of dirt. This is your art teacher talking. And it could be a beautiful attraction, a focal point to the center of our main streets. And I say streets because we have Main Street and we have Federal. We have 2 main streets. And I just need to know whether I should continue with this project or say thanks but no thanks for the money and try and figure out how to end the Centennial Project. Part of this money, as all of you know, was the Community Centennial Project. We have 3 of us here tonight from the committee. Ron's here and so is Jim. And they probably have more details to add to this. But I would really like some input as to how you feel, because reading the article in the paper, even if the mayor's in favor of it, it sounds like the parks people are the ones that have the final decision, or vice versa. I'm not sure which. So we need some direction before we spend a lot of time and effort. I'm all about beautification in our community, cleaning it up, making it better, making it something that we can all be proud of. But sure could use your help to let us know which direction we can go. Can I answer any questions, or did I ask them?
I think you did fine, Your Honor. I guess the way I feel about it is if you want to start this project and you could get the interest and the enthusiasm from the community, I think it's fine. I mean, I think the biggest problem that we're probably going to have is the long-term maintenance and the costs that are associated with that.
Just like everything else in our community. Everything has to be maintained.
That's my 2 cents.
I'll go for
And
two
as
more.
far as the parks backing it or not, there's no longer a parks committee, so that should not be an issue. I'm not sure where the paper got that.
Oh, I think they saw the report from the young lady. They didn't call it Parks Committee, they called it something else with their schematic of what they wanted to do to the city park.
Was that the master plan you're referring
Master
to?
plan, yes.
Your Honor, if I may, I believe the Parks Committee became the Community Engagement Committee, which Councilwoman Schatze and Councilman Rhoda both sit on, and I staff. The committee, it was brought to the committee, and the committee didn't necessarily endorse it outright, but nor did they say, no, don't do it. So to be clear, when we asked for an endorsement, no, they did not endorse it. However, to the question, one of the things that's challenging about any particular large project like this is the scope of the project you're being asked about. To hear the conversations, you'll hear different estimates from $50,000 all the way up to $250,000 or more. That's very difficult for council to consider in terms of maintenance, what is usually done in terms of maintenance or ownership. And I think there's a lot of questions that need to be answered before council can, probably say, yes, go forward and we'll behind it and we'll allow it to be within City Park. Generally speaking, when we do capital projects on a city level, we discuss items like, what are you proposing in terms of a plan, the plans for it, what is it going to look like, what is the maintenance requirements, what is the operational cost, what is ownership, is there a sinking fund attached to it, who will direct construction, who will be the fiscal agent for the matter? Is that going to be the city? Is that what you're asked to do? There's an operational consideration. We could put together a list of general questions that could be answered before council formally considers and says, yes, go forward with this. And we could probably have it to you by the next formal meeting very easily. But it's a little hard for you to say, yes, we're completely in favor of it when you don't know the answers to the questions that are coming up, like how much does it cost to operate? I've been in communities with different size fountains. Some of them cost $5,000 a year. Some of them cost $35,000. There's a difference there, and that's part of your consideration. That would be the only comment I would make.
Thank you.
Mayor, if I could add a little, being on the community engagement committee, when we had sat down and discussed it, as Tony said, we didn't necessarily say no or yes. We were open to the idea of maybe some variations. One of the big concerns right now is the scale. When you look at the size of it, it's fairly large, and with all the work that's been being put into the park, we would hate to take away from all of that right now. So it wasn't that we necessarily said, no, we won't endorse it. Very similar to what Tony was saying, we would just need to hone it in on exactly what it is that we're going to try to put in, rather than saying we want, I can't remember the exact, I want to say it was 100 feet long, maybe 80 feet or something like that. So it was, the scale was an issue, as of course, as reoccurring costs and items like that.
I can answer that. Originally, we had it the width of the street because we plan on planting some pine trees, some different types of foliage to enhance that intersection. It's not that the mound of dirt is going to be that tall, that wide. It'll depend on what we can get to build this with, as far as large rocks
And I think that's-
planting. But we figured that it would be a complement to the community, not a distraction. And when we started planning this, we didn't have the skate park up that close. There's still plenty of room. We took that into consideration. I talked with them when they were doing that project as well. There's lots of things to be considered. I'm sure just like the splash pad, you probably have to figure how much does it cost to run the splash pad. When we had a swimming pool, we had to figure how much does it cost to run the pool and what happens if the chemicals are out of whack and so forth. How much does it cost to clean up the band shell, and so on and so on. And then people will say, well, we need to fix the tennis courts. It's all maintenance, and that's why we have tax money to help do these things. You know, it can't be up to a handful of people to plan the maintenance. That's why we pay taxes,
That's correct.
you know.
Again,
Sorry.
I think where we're coming in full circle is where we say originally we had this plan, but now we're looking at this. That's the issue I think we're running into, where we need more concise and precise example saying, okay, this is what we're going to build. This is how large it'll be, what the costs are going to be. Right now, we're just saying, can we just have this chunk of land and try to put something in there, but we don't really have an idea of what exactly we're looking at yet. I think that's what it's coming down to, is the finer details.
Okay, we feel like we had a great plan when we were doing the street. And we were told to wait until they did federal because we needed to use some of the fill dirt and the curbs and gutters to build the base. And that's what we were told when they did the first section. Then when we got ready for the second section, it was kind of hidden under the carpet, so to speak. No one seemed to know about it, including the new group that's redesigning parks and so forth. And if we hadn't come forth, we'd never been contacted about the original plan.
Yeah, no, I agree. I had never heard of it until
Yeah.
Ron himself had reached out
Yeah.
to me, invited me over to take a look at it. So I do understand that.
But we've done lots of planning and lots of work on it. It didn't just happen overnight. This is probably one of the most thought out projects that's going on right now for our city parks. Anything else?
Councilman Bailey?
Again, I look at this just like we did when we had the skate park, for example. You guys were thinking about this a long time ago, but, you know, the skate park ended up going around figuring out how to raise enough money to do it. And, you know, they're paying their own light bill to light the thing and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, I think that would be a huge consideration, is if you say it's going to be $200,000 when you've raised $200,000, then that's time for us to look more seriously at it, I guess. And then,
And
of
I
course,
agree.
and the concern from the city side of it is, okay, we're in a position this year and last year where we had to cut back on how many police cars we bought, how many lawnmowers we bought. You know, there's been no.
There's always expenses.
You know, it's the city's in a very tight budgetary situation where we're not getting what I would consider the basic things that we need to do done with the funds we have. And so that makes it where, you know, we're very reluctant to take on an additional expense of maintaining a fountain. I mean, and we don't know what that is, but that's something you would have to bring to us and say it's going to cost $5,000 a year or $35,000 a year or whatever it is. And that's going to factor into that decision. You know, but right now, we didn't buy a police car we were needing. You know, we aren't able to put the streetlights up on the north half of the federal project because we didn't have enough funds right now. We put that off until later. So, you know, there's a lot of projects that are not getting funded the way they should right now. And so that's my reluctance in taking on another one. But if you can prove to us that.
But I don't think we can just become stagnated and not improve our community anymore.
That isn't what I'm
sorry.
saying. I'm saying you got to figure out how to fund this. You know, with the skate park, they got a
And
grant
that,
from
and I agree.
you know, another group. And I mean, they went out and beat the bushes and raised $250,000 or whatever.
And all of us helped them.
No, and me included.
Yeah.
And that's great.
Oh,
And
it wasn't
you'll
that they didn't
help
get
from-
community support.
That's where we're at, I think, before the city can
Okay. And
decision.
a lot of the people have said, you know, we would like to see our tax dollars go to beautification to finish the project. So that's why we had 28 people here the other night. But
We're not talking about tax dollars. We're talking about,
I know,
we got to come up with the money.
I know. But sales
Tax
tax is
dollars
all
would
part of
maybe
it.
be there to maintain it, but we got to see what that number is, and that's going to factor in
And that's typical of every project.
every one of them. Yep.
Okay, any other questions for me? Because there's other people here that can answer probably better than I.
Anyone else that would like to address us? Councilman Hancock?
I love the idea of this because I think that having something like that at the intersection is a great idea. But there's just so much that's still up in the air. How much it's going to cost, how much you're going to be able to raise, what's going to be the upkeep, what exactly we're looking at. And I think, for example, even when we had the meeting, part of the discussion centered around, we can make it what you want to make it. When you were talking with everybody about it, you're like, that all depends on what people want and figuring it out. So on the one hand, it sounds like you're trying to say we can be flexible, but then on the other hand, sometimes I hear that we're not going to be flexible. So there's a lot that's up in the air, and I think until we have a little bit more detail, that makes it really hard. Even when it comes down to, I've heard some people talking about how, okay, if you're heading down Main Street, I like being able to see the skaters. And I think somebody had even mentioned that during the meeting, and I think you were kind of saying, well, we don't have to have it too big so that it blocks them or it won't block them. And so there's a lot about it that we just don't have answers to right now, and that makes it hard, I guess, for people to really jump in and say, yes, for sure, we love it. But right now, in theory, I love the idea of there being a feature there. We had even talked about maybe not necessarily having water. That would save on the upkeep, of course. So I think just all of those things need to be hammered out a little bit before I think we could say for sure as a council, yay or nay on it.
Okay. Well, and we can't quote you an amount unless we have the approval to go ahead and work on it, since it's in the city property. I mean, we really are, our hands are kind of tied. But I'm going to let these other guys talk to you because they may have something up their sleeve I don't have.
Thank you,
Okay?
Gary.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I'm Ron Wartness, and surprise, I'm here to talk about the water feature. So anyway, some of the comments that I'll have may be a little redundant. So when I put these thoughts together, it didn't have that as a prelude. So some of them are probably redundant, but I'll charge ahead anyway. Those of you that know me know that I like to put things in writing so you don't have to read between the lines of what I'm thinking and what I'm, So, and I can pick and choose the words that I want, and I've got Ernie a copy of this remark, so he and I have always had that relationship, which seems to work pretty well. And I understand the position that the council and Mayor Gard are in regarding this issue. I hear what you're saying, Tim, but I'll go ahead and the water feature in City Park was designed through a lot of hard work by the Main Street Centennial Committee in about 2004 to 2006. This group has always planned on its being completed in the future when funds and timing were more favorable. I'm sure the council and public record will support that position if someone wants to look into it. Without the water feature, the river pattern on our sidewalks does not make any sense. It is also worth noting that when the skate park was being located in the park, we made sure that room between it and Federal Boulevard left room for the water feature. If it had been left up to the skaters, they would have preferred that it be located a lot closer to Federal. But due to that desire to have room for the water feature and safety issues for the skaters, we held it back. In reading the Sunday Ranger Friday night, I didn't understand that, I was struck by the negative attitude against the water feature plan for the city park. This was after the glowing editorial by Steve Peck in the paper on Wednesday the 28th. Thank you, Steve. In this latest article, Mayor Gard describes the water feature as a kind of large mound of dirt and says that it's a private idea that is not supported by our Parks Committee or anybody else. And I also note that we don't have a Parks Committee. This was a painful comment to read, and it shows an amazing lack of support and sensitivity by the leadership of our community for a long-standing beautification dream of many of us in the community. Given that description reminds me of a discussion with one of my friends, Arnold Graber, when we were in Jackson. I asked Arnie how he perceived the Grand Teton Mountains outside our window. He said that they were just a large pile of rocks, which is probably an accurate description, but my, how inadequate. You need to know that my friend was congenitally blind and had never seen a mountain, and so his lack of appreciation of the grandeur of the Tetons can be forgiven. Councilman Schatz's comments about the engagement committee not being excited about the water feature, I felt was 100% accurate. When I presented it to the committee, many were very uninformed about this idea, and while they were not opposed, they were not excited by it. I'll have to admit that there are many things that others do that I am not excited by, but I still offer them support. The food hub comes to mind, but I do love to eat, and I donated $50 to it. The attitude in this article also does not understand or appreciate the beautiful pile of dirt we are planning. This lack of support is also very surprising given the fact that city beautification is an identified council goal, and that this is specifically what this water feature is all about. Jerry Kinsler at one time in his long career was an art instructor at the college, and if memory serves me correctly, was nominated for Teacher of the Year for Wyoming. I can assure you that this man is not envisioning a pile of dirt. This article also was after the strong show of support at the meeting in the council chambers on the 22nd with Mayor Guard, City Administrator Tolstead, and Councilman Borders being in attendance along with over 30 other citizens. There was only one individual who outright opposed this project. At this time, we have an MOU with the Depot Foundation ready to be signed that will allow us to raise funds using their 501c3 status. We are preparing to move forward on this fundraising as well as completing the formal organization of our board with interested citizens. I personally am not going to charge into the underbrush without a clear understanding of the status of this effort in the eyes of the mayor and city council. If it were not being planned on city property, this would not be so critical. The new hospital is a good example. They can move forward without formal city approval. Short-sighted, but possible. The water feature cannot. And so I would like to ask that the council take a formal vote on this matter so that those of us that are ready to get in the trenches and do this work know exactly where we stand on this issue. This vote does not have to be at this meeting, but it does need to be as soon as possible. I would also like to suggest that insofar as possible, we should all be singing from the same hymnal on things of substance, such as community hospitals, tax increases to help our transportation needs, or the funding of alcohol rehabilitation in our community, as well as large beautification projects such as this. We can argue about chickens, and I have. We can argue about weeds, and I have. We can argue about dogs, and I have. We can even argue about shipping containers. But on the big issues, in my opinion, we should be civil, sensitive, and united as a community. So I just feel that the group that wants to move ahead needs to know, and I understand that you don't want to commit to anything. We don't want to go out and try to raise funds if we don't have the city's support. And if they do donate money to us, then what are you going to do with the monies that we've generated? And that was one of the first questions when I went over and talked to Alan Moore at the Depot Foundation. If this becomes abandoned in the future and you're shooting for 200,000, you only raise 100, and it dies, what are you going to do with the money? So we put a stipulation in the MOU that takes care of that issue. And so anyway, we're just wanting to move ahead on a project that's been sitting on the back burner for a long time. It's a beautification project. The community of Riverton, Councilman Bailey is talking about how tight the budget is, how things are drying up. I agree. You either move forward or you die. And I think that we need to invest in our community, and if you've got citizens that are willing to do it, then say, yeah, shoot your best shot. And then when it comes time to get ready to raise taxes for transportation, I'll work just as hard on that one, because that's one that we desperately need, just as we needed the 1% for our roads. And what a blessing that's been. But so anyway, I mean,
Jim. Do you have anything to add?
Well, Mayor, since you called on me, yes, I'll say something. I think it, is none of you folks were involved in the council at the time, with perhaps the exception of Mayor Guard. At the time this entire project was conceptualized, put together, and Main Street was revitalized. And, that project in its entirety, I think, has done an awful lot of good for our downtown. It wasn't getting any better on its own at the time that project was initiated. And so this feature, though, was a central element to that total project, kind of the capstone to the project. There was at one point some monies in the budget to address that, and it got, shall we politely say, reallocated to what was termed at the time budget repair. I would like to have budget repair on my personal bank account too, but I don't know if that was the purpose of the funds when they were allocated to the project. Nonetheless, you folks as the elected leadership have more to do to influence what direction this community goes than any of the rest of the people in the community. And what is your vision for our community? Which direction are we going? Are we continually doing things that enhance the community, make it a more interesting and inviting place to live? Or are we sitting stagnant, which really is not stagnation, but rather recession? Because everything keeps changing. And there's always going to be a lack of funding for the things that we'd want to do and like to do. But where are we going as a vision for the community in that whole realm of choices that you folks have been elected to make choices on? And they're not going to agree with what you pick, isn't going to agree with everyone. But what direction are we moving? And what is your vision for that direction? And how are you going to move it forward or not? And, that really is the summation of my thoughts. We're not going to stay where we are. Where is it that we want to go? And some of these things, at least in my personal opinion, move us either forward and make us a more vibrant community that's more inviting, or we kind of sit back and wait and see what happens. So, I'd really encourage your consideration and hopefully your support for it. And if it moves forward, those who are willing to contribute to it with, financially or with their time and effort, will be given that opportunity, I think, including each and every one of you. So, thank you. I've probably talked too long already.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Anyone else wishing to address the council? Mia, I thought you put your hand up.
No.
No.
Thank you, sir.
Anyone else on the council?
Connor? But I guess the thought would be, one way or the other, I think we'd need to have this where we can actually address it and give formal support or not. I think the only way that this has been brought before the council up until now has been during the communications from the floor, And that's it. We've not had it as an agenda item. It hasn't been something that we've ever really kind of formally considered. So I'd say one way or the other, I would think at our next regular council meeting, we have this as an item, we discuss it, and we figure out what we want to do. That way we can advertise it, we can get public to be here if they want to be here, say one way or the other. I just think up until now, just everything has been citizens' comments, which I appreciate, and that's a way to get the council to listen to you, but I think if we actually had this as a formal agenda item at our next meeting, it'd help at least give direction one way or the other. So that'd be, I guess, I'd make a motion for that we consider this as a formal item at our next regular meeting.
I would second that if that's what you're looking for.
Did you have a comment
And then
first?
I guess I would have a comment on that. So before that happens, we need a, concrete number of what you think it's going to cost to build and what the expected long-term, yearly maintenance would be. And if there's any options of, adding this, subtracting this, whatever. If you only come up with 150 out of the 200, we would do X or delete certain parts or something like that, so that we have a concrete plan, because as the city, our part of accepting that you're going to do that is we've got to accept it and maintain it. And so I think that's one of the major considerations of us looking at that, is what our long-term liability for maintaining that will be.
Your Honor?
Please.
One item that is agreeing with Councilman Bailey about the long-term operation. However, without knowing what the design of the fountain is going to be, they've talked about having a set of pumps, in which they do. They're a little over a decade old, and we don't know what the draw on those, if they're going to design around the fountain, that's one thing. And if that's their idea, that's great. But we would kind of want to check what we would estimate the operational cost, because what it seems to be talking about is the city managing the fountain long-term and maintaining it, including the utilities for that. So we would want to try to check those calculations to make sure that you're receiving good information, because it would be terrible for you to hear one number and then find out after being built that we're paying for something else. It might be useful for us to review any operational cost estimates.
I have some concerns that I would put forth, and I realize my name's in this and on the front page. I did attend all of the meetings. I've been in that conversation. Mayor Warpness and I had a very personal conversation in the mayor's office, kind of mayor-to-mayor conversation, and we both understand where each other's at. I was not, Jim was kind enough to say I was on the council when we put this forward clear back in '04. I wasn't. I was still in high school. Okay, I wasn't in high school. I was just barely out of high school. But the reality of it was, it was removed from the budget in '06 because we didn't have the money for it in '06, is the reality of it. And I was an owner of property on Main Street. I'd been assessed for the parking lot on the overhead door building. I was assessed money for the city parking lot on the Park and Fremont building that I had. Jerry mentions that he pays taxes, and so whatever we do, those taxes should pay for that. The problem with that theory is we're going to have to raise taxes, and we don't do that well in Fremont County. Mayor Warpness and I have gone to bat hard on the 1 cent. We don't want to lose that. We're holding hard onto that, and it's been a great enhancement to Fremont County. With that said, we are not doing anything with City Park. Our police chief has gone out of his way by direction to clean up and get the park back in a viable, usable condition. We would put a splash pad in. And I think all we council members have taken the point of the spear over the fact that the splash pad hasn't functioned as well as we'd like to have it work. It's a wonderful feature. We put a mural up that is resemblance of Riverton City Main Street. I would like that to be seen. It was mentioned that we set back the skate park to where it's at. Matt Wright and myself, Rich Guard, were the ones that drove the stakes in the park. And we had no concern of what was in front of us when we did that. I was there and drove the stakes in with my own hammer. And so I think we do need somebody to come in there. There is an irrigation right-of-way that flows in front of that. That's why there's a bump in the front of the park. We can't sit on top of that. I don't want to cover up the mural. I don't want to cover up the splash pad. Our part has been to clean up the park, and we've done a good job of that since the first of the year. And we go by with our spotlights, whether you think we do or you don't. We go by at night, we spotlight the park, and we look through it to see who's in it. And there's a curfew on the park, and our people have done a good job with it. Our Parks Committee, which is now our Enhancement Committee, whether it was disbanded or not, has gone out of their way to really take concern of what the parks ought to be and what would work. And so I don't just want to pass over all of that good information that is current and with people that are wanting to proceed with what they've developed and go back to a 13-year-old idea. I did attend the meeting that had 27 people in it, and there was more than one naysayer. Kim Wilberg, who is an expert on fountain building, pointed out that fountains are extremely hard to maintain, and that he put one in for the hospice, and it ran for 5 years and hasn't run for the last 5 years. And so for us to sit back and say, everybody was unanimously in favor of that is not the way that meeting went down. And so I didn't want to pour water on that. It wasn't my job to step on the tulips in that meeting. I was trying to make things work. And so I think it's really a smart idea for us to get together with a proposal of what things would cost. 10-year-old pumps aren't a good idea. 10-year-old liners are not a good idea. We need to know what that's going to cost us and what the size and magnitude of it is. I apologize for calling it what do I call it, a hill of dirt? I don't know how else to build a water fountain. Guess we could build it out of styrofoam. But the comments were made that we didn't get the dirt from South Federal or North Federal project that we hoped to get. And so there is some costs and concerns. And there's other people years later that have interest in what the park's doing. And so as much as I am in consent that it's not a bad idea, I think there's better ideas. I would love to see, and have for years, Mayor Wartness knows this also, I would love to see Veterans Park there, not behind a commercial building off of Federal. And so we all have our desires, and I think we need to put those all back together and see how those shake out. And that's if I presume that I'm negative, I apologize for that. I didn't step on the tulips in the Thursday night meeting because I didn't want to be a naysayer. And so I think what we really need to do, we do have a motion by Councilman Hancock. I don't know if the timing's good. I think Councilman Bailey has some point that it makes it tough for us to vote on something that we don't know the costs on. One other comment that I'd like to throw in, just so everybody gets my thoughts on top of the page. The splash pad we put in, and we never even realized until we tried to operate it that we had to have an operator check that level of water every 4 hours and make sure that it was chemically balanced. Now, I don't know if we have to chemically balance a water fountain or not. That would be a wonderful question to ask. It's recirculated water, just like the water that we're using at the splash pad, and somebody could get a drink out of it. And so that's a maintenance thing that we have to take care of, and we have to have people check that, and that's an expensive process. And so we're all just a little bit sensitive over cost and maintenance in the park. Thank you. Mayor, did you have something to add?
If I could, please. You mentioned that you have a vision of moving the Veterans Park into the city park, and I would work to see if that were possible as well. In fact, I called Jim Arndt this evening and asked him if he had been contacted by anyone with the city regarding moving the Veterans Park there, and he said no. And I asked him, would the veterans be interested in doing that? And he thought for a minute, and he says, well, we've got about $84,000 invested in the existing park, and we're getting ready to have a dedication of another memorial. And he said, boy, that would be a tough tooth to pull, and to move it down there. Okay, but if they were, and if I don't think that you're a veteran, Mayor Guard, I am. And so this is something that I'm very supportive of. And if we could solve this little hiatus over this water feature, okay, and then come back to the veterans and move that somewhere within the park, I would be very supportive of that. That needs to be front and center, I think, in our community. But it doesn't need to be right directly in the center of where this water feature has been designed all this time. There's plenty of room in the park for it. And then we're back to the same issue again. But I just wanted to make the point that in talking to Jim Arndt, who's the chairman of the Veterans Hall, and has been working on all of these things, the veterans have not been contacted. They're not interested in doing it at this time, according to Jim. And he said, we may be able to get together and generate that to make that move in the future. And if that were possible, hey, I'm on board for it. Anyway.
Mayor, that was my idea 4 years ago, and I can realize my idea 4 years ago was a bad one and didn't happen.
I had a lot of ideas 4 years ago.
Yeah, we've all had bad ideas that didn't happen.
Yeah, well, I've had good ideas that didn't happen.
There we are. Jim.
I'll just stand here if you don't mind.
We need you to come up so the audience can hear you.
Okay.
Not this audience, the television audience.
Yeah, heaven help us, they didn't get to see me, right? To address some of the questions that have been raised, and particularly by Councilman Bailey, part of what will be generated and developed during the exploration of this as being a possible project is, what is it going to cost? Where are you going to get all the things that you need to? What sorts of things need to be considered in its operation? You're not going to have those answers by next week or next month or anything. This is something that evolves as a project gets developed. And, like any other project, whether it's adding to your business or whatever, it's going to take some time and figure out what are all the stumbling blocks that may come along and how you're going to address them. So, be patient, please, with the development of those answers to all of your good questions, because that's going to take time, and as we would move forward, those things will get addressed, and there should be enough public discussion that at least that will assuage the questions that the public, too, is going to come up with. What are you going to do about this? I don't know. Let's find out. So, okay, thanks once again.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate it. Gary?
Just for the record, the veterans were offered another location in town, and they chose this one. The cemetery board offered them prime property up at Mountain View Cemetery for their park, and they turned it down because they wanted to be down here. So there have been offers made.
Interesting thought. Any other discussion? So, Councilman Hancock, do you want to move forward on your motion, or do you want to get some time to see what this is going to cost?
Well, it had been seconded by Councilwoman Borders. I figured we were at the discussion phase. I think it'd be good to have more answers, and if we wanted to wait until next month, that'd be good, if we could at least get a range, an estimate.
It won't happen that quick. It just won't.
But anyway, I do think, though, we need to have an opportunity for the public to be there, for everybody to be there and at least talk about it, because I think he's right. We've kind of got this game of chicken where one of us has got to kind of say one way or the other what we're going to do, and it's difficult for them to really invest a lot of time and effort in this if they're not even sure if they're going to have the space. So I think we ought to still have the meeting. If we wanted to give just a little more time to see if anything else can shake out, we could do it in October. But the motion, I think, was for the next regular meeting. If you guys want some more time and do it in October, we can do that, or if you want to move ahead when you've got actually some interest.
I can't speak for the group, but I personally would like to have it sooner the better.
So I just stand by my motion, and I just ask for a vote on it, and we decide whether we're going to talk about it at our next regular meeting.
Second stance?
Yeah, for now.
We have a motion for the next regular council meeting, which would be the 2 weeks from now. It would be
Yes,
17th.
17th, Your Honor.
To have a public hearing.
Just a public meeting, just have it as an agenda item that we might have any.
Is that just a good idea? Do we need a public hearing or just a public?
Your Honor, you do not require a public hearing on it. It can be advertised as just a discussion topic or as just a discussion, and then there can be a motion made at that if it's necessary. But at this point, we don't have, unless you direct us, we don't have anything to make a motion on.
So you don't need the motion, or you do want the motion? Councilman?
The motion stands to have it on the next meeting, and we'll work out the details by the 17th.
Your Honor, I'm sorry. I think I'm going to rescind my second.
Okay.
I think we need to give these gentlemen more time to come up with something before we can really move forward. So I'd say a month or two, maybe. That's my feeling.
Okay. Do we have another second?
I'll second it.
All in favor? Oh, can I just call for the vote?
Yes, Your Honor. So if we're clear, the motion is to bring it at the next meeting on the 17th, and the second supports that, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
2, 3, 4. Tim, did you aye?
Yes, sir.
So we have a 4-2 vote. So we will have it on the agenda for the next meeting.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. Yeah,
Just one.
sure.
And restating that, I feel that by having it on the agenda and advertising it, it can show support or it cannot show support. Then we can determine, excuse me, which direction we want to go. And if there's nobody interested in it other than 27 people out of a city of 10,000, then that's already spoken. But I think as Tim has said, we need some type of, City Park is not ours. City Park is the citizens and which way they want to go. And a skate park is a different generation than a water fountain. It just is. So, and tennis courts. When was the last time we had tennis courts? Or horseshoes. Things move on. And so we need the citizens to tell us what they want to do with the park. We've already got it loud and clear. They want it clear of any drinking without permits. We've got that clear. So we just want some type of input from them. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Have we ridden that horse to death? Okay. Let's go on to the consent agenda. The city clerk, would please read the consent agenda items by title only?
Yes, Your Honor. Approval of the minutes, August 20th, 2019, regular council meeting. Approval of the minutes, September 3rd, 2019, Finance Committee meeting. Approval of the Finance Committee recommendations for September 3rd, 2019, and an open container permit application submitted by Ken Watts with the Contemporary Historical Vehicle Association for a chuck wagon dinner at Sunset Park on September 7th, 2019, from 2 p.m. to 8 p.m.
Thank you. I think everybody got that permit passed around to them. Are there any items requiring further discussion?
Yes, Your Honor. The recommendation from the Finance Committee was for bills to be paid in the amount of $567,092.33, manual checks in the amount of $25,034.80, payroll liabilities for August 16, 2019 in the amount of $394,194.18, for a total of $986,321.31.
Thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second?
I have a motion by Councilman Bailey and a second by Councilman Rhoda. Further discussion?
Your Honor,
Yes.
usually I think when we get these open permit applications, we have recommendation from the staff. Is that correct? Don't we normally have that one way or the other?
Your Honor.
Yes.
No, they're always on the consent agenda.
Do we have any concerns or anything about this? I mean, everything was in order, everything was done as it should be according to the rules?
Your Honor. Yes, it was. The person who was applying for the permit didn't understand that there was a deadline to get it into the packet.
Okay. That was all, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're back to the motion. No further discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. The motion passes. Mayor proclamation. This is a proclamation that's been given to us from the National Recovery Month 2019 30th year anniversary. Whereas recovery and mental and substance use disorder, including co-occurring disorder, is an essential part of health and one's overall wellness. And whereas treatment and recovery services of mental health and substance use disorder and co-disorder is effective, and people can and do recover in our area and around the nation. And whereas we encourage relatives and friends and people with mental and substance abuse disorder and co-occurring disorder to implement preventive measures, recognizing the signs of problems, and encourage those in need of help to seek proper treatment and recover support service. And whereas to help more people with lived experiences advance and to sustain recovery, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, and the City of Riverton invite all residents of our community to participate in the National Recovery Month. And now, therefore, I, Mayor Richard P. Gard, do hereby proclaim the month of September 2019 as National Recovery Month in Riverton, and call upon our community to observe this month with appropriate programs, activities, and ceremonies to support this year's Recovery Month theme. Join the voices of recovery. Together we are stronger, and to celebrate the 30th anniversary of Recovery Month observance. In witness thereof, I hereunto set my hand this third day of September 2019. Kyle, would you pass that on to Kristen? Thank you. We're on item 10, ordinance number 19-009, third and final reading of the RMC Chapter 6.08, Article 2, revision, registering of dogs. Would the city clerk please read ordinance number 19-009 by title only?
Yes, Your Honor. Proposed ordinance number 19-009 on third and final reading. An ordinance amending Title VI Animals to revise Chapter 6.08 Dogs and Cats, Article 2 Registration of Dogs, and to establish Section 6.08.010 definitions of the Riverton Municipal Code and repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict therewith and providing for an effective date.
Thank you. Chair would entertain a motion to adopt ordinance number 19-009 on third and final reading.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Hancock and a second by Councilman Rhoda. We need a roll call vote on this. So, Kristen, would you?
I have a question.
Oh, excuse me. I did miss discussion. Yes.
It's all right. I just have a question, and I'm totally for this ordinance, but why do we register dogs and not cats and goats and chickens and all the other things that we allow to be in the city of Riverton?
Your Honor.
Ducks.
Oh, ducks.
You can have ducks. Kristen, could you explain that for us?
Sure. In speaking with our animal control officer, the reason that dogs are registered is because we can control their rabies shots. So they're registered, they're most likely to bite a citizen. And so if we can control them being registered in conjunction with their rabies shot, that's why we don't register cats, because we don't want cats to wear collars around their neck with tags on them, because they're more likely to jump in trees or fences and get caught.
Okay.
You okay with that?
I hope we don't get sued for discrimination from the owners of the community.
From the cat lovers?
I think there's going to be a cat
right.
catastrophe, maybe.
Do they give cats rabies shots?
They don't.
Does anybody know?
They do not.
No, they don't. So I
Cats
sub-
rule, dogs rule. You know, that's just,
I have both a dog and a cat, and I think the cat would have something to say about that. Thanks, Kristen. I appreciate your help. So we have a motion from Councilman Hancock and a second by Councilman Rhoda. Could we have roll call on those, please?
Yes, Your Honor. Councilwoman Carla Borders.
Yes.
Councilman Tim Hancock.
Aye.
Councilman Mike Bailey.
Aye.
Councilman Kyle Larson.
Aye.
Councilman Corey Rhoda.
Aye.
Mayor Richard Gard.
Aye. Motion passes. Police Vehicle Award, City Administrator's Report, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. In the fiscal year 2020 budget, the city allocated $50,000 for the purchase of a single police vehicle. As we've done in the past, we are able to take advantage of the state's purchasing program, allowing us to take part in the state bid. We've done this a couple times recently, and this is no different. At this point, we have the ability to purchase a Chevy Tahoe for $35,511. In addition to the $35,000, outfitting of the vehicle would be approximately $11,000, with the remaining amount being able to finish the outfitting and the decals. This would bring us in under the $50,000 budgeted amount. As we are allowed to take part in the state bid, we are recommending that council approve the bid for the Chevy Tahoe in the amount of $35,511, which also, as a point of information, goes to Fremont Chevrolet. We would be happy to answer any questions after your motion.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve the purchase of one 2020 Chevy Tahoe from Fremont Chevy GMC Buick in the amount of $35,511.
So moved.
second.
We have a motion from Councilman Hancock and a second from Councilman Bailey. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. The motion passes. Resolution number 1397, local preference purchasing policy. City Administrator's report, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. At the most recent City Council meeting, staff was directed to prepare a local preference purchasing policy for amendment to our purchasing procedures for the City of Riverton. As we have discussed previously, this is an allowed action in so long as council defines the geographical area and determines the amount, so essentially setting a policy. In this case, we were directed to proceed with a 5% bid preference, with the geographical location being within the bounds of Fremont County. The policy that you have before you, supported by the Resolution 1397, also deals with the procedure for which that will be applied. In this case, the application of the local preference will be within, for those businesses that have an office or a satellite office and at least one full-time employee located within Fremont County. So, additionally, the calculation and exceptions are listed within the policy. During our discussion, it became evident that there are certain times that we should exempt the policy. At an absolute minimum, in cases where federal and state policies or law prohibit the application of a local preference, obviously we can apply those. That does happen with airports. The local preference provided herein should also not be in addition to any other preference. So while 5% is fine, we don't necessarily want to be adding another 5% on top of that, and then we start getting into some serious money on capital projects. As such, the policy before you would allow for, the approval of Resolution 1397 would allow for the implementation of the policy as presented. At this point, we recommend approval as provided and would happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Resolution, would the city clerk please read Resolution 1397 by title only?
Yes, Your Honor. A resolution adopting an addendum to the City of Riverton, Wyoming purchasing procedures.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve Resolution 1397.
Your Honor, I would move that we approve Resolution 1397.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Councilman Bailey and a second by Councilwoman Borders. Any further discussion?
Your Honor.
Yes.
I think we had discussed there are other communities in Wyoming that do this as well. It's not unheard of in Wyoming, correct?
Your Honor.
Yes, please.
Actually, when we had heard plenty of that. The challenge that we ran into is when trying to find language. Everybody had language that was similar to our existing language, which was we promote local purchasing, and we want to seek local bids in conjunction with any other bids and get the best price. However, we could not find another one that was like this. We did have plenty of people say, when you write it, can we have it? So we wrote it. And as such, we don't have another one like this to reference. Hopefully, we did it well enough that we won't have to come back to you in a short period of time and say, we made a mistake, but if we did, we will. We do know that counties, when we're looking into it, have slightly different rules in their purchasing than cities, but I think we all know that in their purchasing practices. So we do not have another one to reference, but we do have the first that we know of.
Always nice to be, first, but it's also nerve-wracking a little bit.
Your Honor, sorry.
Councilman Bailey.
The state of Wyoming does have a resident purchasing policy that would be very similar to this.
Your Honor, and it's important to note, just as Councilman Bailey pointed out, that the language and the calculation method we used were pulled from the state. Mm-hmm. That's their language because we knew that was tested.
Now, to make it even simpler for all of us is, and I think that we do a wonderful job of this, and the city employees work really hard to get local prices and Fremont County prices. And so they are attuned to this. Councilman Bailey brought this up, and he was right to do so. If we can keep a preference in our local area, the dollars stay a little longer and bounce around a little bit more, and it would be good for us to do that. But what we're talking about is there are purchase limits on each staff member that they can purchase up to. Tony, do you want to relate those? Do you have those on the tip of your?
Mine is up to, I believe, 35,000. I would defer to Mia because she's memorized them, I think.
Mia, could you help us?
Yours is up to 5,000, and then anything above that is approved through the Finance Committee.
Correct.
Through the minutes of the Finance Committee, through the mayor and the council.
Okay, so that would be our finance committee before our council meeting. So if we had a $33,000 purchase that we wanted to make, we'd take that to the finance committee? Is that correct? Okay. So how much can Kyle spend without the rest of us?
Your Honor?
Yes.
Councilman Kyle Butterfield?
Yep.
$3,000 is his limit without further approval from Tony.
How about yourself?
Department heads are all $3,000.
Okay. And I think that needs to be public knowledge because we don't just spend money willy-nilly. And $3,000 is a lot of money to spend. Eric could get us both into the golf course with that. So there's reasons for those limits, and yet all of our department heads work really hard to make sure that we get local bids and try to keep our money in Riverton and working for Fremont County. So I think Councilman Bailey had a good point to bring this up. Preference of 5% on bids when we can would be a good idea to keep those local. Councilman Hancock.
And I think it's good for people to understand how this is going to work. This isn't saying that every single time somebody locally bids, we're reducing it by 5%. We're talking about when you have an out-of-state bid, we're talking about an increase. And that was one of the things when I first looked at this and was thinking about it, I was like, wait a minute, if every single time somebody bid, we're losing 5% due to a local bidder, that wouldn't be a good idea. We'd be losing a lot of money. But I like the way this is written. I think it makes a lot of sense. It's a good way to get what we're wanting to do without getting us in trouble. It's really just talking about when you have that comparison between a non-local bidder with a local bidder, that's where we're talking about it. Not every single time they get the reduction, which is what I was envisioning, and I was initially a little bit skeptical because I was like, we're going to lose a lot of money. But I think it makes a lot of sense. I think it works well. I appreciate the work you put into getting it, Tony.
Actually, Mia?
Your Honor, I apologize, I misspoke. Tony's authority limit is $34,999, so anything above that would go to you, which is also the statutory requirements for bids on jobs.
So we need to stay on Tony's good side. That's a lot. But I think in a preference bid, what we're talking about is if somebody from Natrona County bids and somebody from Fremont County bids, the Fremont County bid can be accepted if it's 5% higher. If it's 6% higher, it's out. Right?
Correct, Your Honor. If the calculation is applied and the bid is still higher, then it isn't applied.
If it comes in at 4%, we can still take the Fremont County price. It costs us 4%. We have to understand that. But it's a local purchase from Fremont County. And so preferences don't save you money. Preferences allow you to keep money locally.
And Your Honor, I'm sorry, one more thing. I just noticed this. Procedure has two, after bids are solicited and tabulated, each out-of-state bid. I think that's meant to be non-local bid or something like that, just different language there. That's clearly where we got it from the state, was right there.
Yes, Your Honor, it is.
Can
I will make the adjustment.
you wordsmith that?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman Hancock. Somebody has to read really well. So, any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Door-to-door solicitation discussion. City Administrator's report, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. At the most recent council meeting, there was discussion about some potential challenges with regard to door-to-door solicitors, and that there were some problems at one point, and we had heard about that through social media, and we had been reported to council. So it was asked that we look into how we might address that. So what we have done is we have looked at our existing law, which is relatively short. It states that it is unlawful for any person to enter upon the premises of another with the intent to sell merchandise, either from stock or by order, when such property is posted with the sign prohibiting solicitation. This section shall not apply if entry is made by prior appointment or by contractual relationship between the person and the owner, exists which allows for entry, or the use of door hangers as a means of communication. Essentially, if you don't want somebody to participate in solicitation on your property, walk up, knock on your door, then it is your responsibility to post it. In an effort to kind of do some research, I went back to some of the older things that I had worked on before, and that is actually provided for you as part of your packet. You'll notice that it is relatively extensive. Based on the conversations with our chief of police, what we have found is that the occurrences are relatively small in terms of frequency, and the addition of that type of language becomes a little burdensome, both for staff and our operations, but also for enforcement with our police department. Ultimately, at the end of the day, what happens is if we instituted something like that and somebody were to still go to door and still solicit without a license or without a permit, no matter how that person would still have to call, and they would still have the same basic punishment. Whereas if it is posted no solicitation and the person calls, then they will get that same punishment. As such, it would be our recommendation at this point to use some of our social media to educate the public about, if you don't want people soliciting at your property, then please post it. It does not need to be huge. It just needs to be I've seen them on gates up at the front of a property, right by a set of steps. If it's easily visible, then those individuals can be ticketed if they choose to go onto that property again. I've seen some pretty creative signs. And I won't go into those, but as such, right now we're happy to move forward if council so wishes with something a little bit more developed. The challenge that we find is that the step between what you have and any sort of permitting process becomes relatively cumbersome in terms of how we implement it and who has to check off on it. A lot of the time, as you will see in the other one, there are background checks available. There are multiple staff members checking off on it. And that is in an effort to help the public and protect the public. In the cases that's moved that particular policy along, there were many more incidents than what we're seeing right now. I would say that if we use our social media standing and get information out, and that doesn't work, or the items continue, increase in frequency or severity, then we revisit it. But at this point, we wouldn't recommend moving forward with a large policy. Thank you, Your Honor.
I would ask if anybody has any discussion that they'd want to have on this. Tim?
I guess the reality is, you're saying if we were to have a policy in place where, okay, somebody would have to register or something like that before they could go door to door, and they didn't register, or they went door to door when they weren't supposed to, the remedy would be you'd call the police would come, and they'd tell them, you don't get to do that, could issue them a citation, they'd have to go to court. And you're saying if we were to do that versus what we already have now, which is if you have a no soliciting sign and somebody shows up and they solicit, they could call the police would come, they'd say you're not allowed to do that, and they'd give them a citation. And the punishment for both of them would be exactly the same. Just so, in case people are curious, it is unlawful. Anytime you see unlawful in the city code, that means it's punishable by 6 months in jail, $750 fine, or both, which is the maximum jurisdiction that the court can exercise for municipal. So really, we've got we've already got a remedy in place. You're saying it'd just make a lot of sense to educate people and make sure they understand if you don't want people there, put out a sign.
Your Honor, yes, that is correct.
Your Honor, just one question. I was reading through that. The no solicitation of registration of no solicitation, is that something we have already in Riverton?
You mean that is in the attached documents?
Right.
No.
Okay, that's all.
No, that is part of the overall policy that was developed, and that developed a list that said if you're on a no solicitation list and somebody goes to that, you can be immediately ticketed whether they report you or not. It allows for a certain more amount of severity and enforcement, but again, there were a lot more incidents.
Is that about mail carriers?
No, Your Honor.
EYA.
I guess you're all right.
We say no mail carriers bringing bills,
Bills,
only
bills.
if they're bringing money. Is that a possibility?
Only
Can't help you if
because
your power gets turned off.
I think, for my point, what turns my thought on this is I think that we really do need to make sure that everybody, and we should use our Facebook page and website page and make sure that everybody that chooses to knows that they don't have to have solicitation at their door. That they can mark that on their fence, on their doors, wherever they would like to stop that solicitation. And then the other thing that from past experience, I would also suggest that you don't open your door if you don't want to have that conversation, because some of these guys are really pushy, and elderly ladies and elderly gentlemen don't have the ability to get them out. So the chief's more than willing to come whenever he's called. I have proven that fact. And so it isn't that the police won't respond, it's that you don't have to have that inference in your house if you don't want it. So we would encourage you from the city's standpoint to post your property, to keep that sign in a place where it can be read easily. And if somebody does knock on your door that you don't choose to have a conversation with, that you don't open that door, that you stay behind it and have what conversation you can with them. And if they don't go away, please call our police. Our police will be quick to respond.
And I guess I would note, if somebody comes to your property and you tell them to leave and they do not, that's also trespassing. That's not just a solicitor or something. If somebody's on your property, it's your property, you tell them to leave and they stay there, that would be trespassing, which is another 6 months in jail, $750 fine or both. So,
And yet, so we don't put everybody to where they can't sleep tonight, the chief says to us, this is not a problem in Riverton. We have very little of this that goes on. And so I wouldn't start handwriting your no solicitation note and putting it out tonight. But it is your responsibility as citizens to mark your own property and to advance that call. The pages that we would add to our ordinance are 9 pages of small written, clear down to page 20, 25. And so I think the chief's right in what he's suggesting. I appreciate his input on those items, and I think it's a good thought to not push it. Carla?
Your Honor, I realize that this is probably a separate issue, but I just want to get clarification for the citizens. With the upcoming census that's coming up, we're going to have door-to-door census takers, and I think I just kind of want some clarification on how that would work for. Does the same thing apply?
Your Honor?
Yes.
I can't answer that question right now. It would seem that it is not a solicitation. There's no sales involved. There's no exchange of goods or services. So I do not believe it. And also, I believe it being a federal
Requirement.
that it probably isn't covered within that. However, just for the sake of clarity, we'll double check, and we'll be able to tell you in a week. That's a great question.
We'll ask that question. I would, though, think that your property is your property, and if you don't want to talk to the census agency, unfortunately, I would encourage you to talk to the census people. We've been in the meetings with them. The information that they bring back to Wyoming is astounding. Last time in 2015, the state of Wyoming received $880,000 back from the census. So the more correct the census is, the more money that we get back from the federal government to the state of Wyoming. So I would encourage all people to answer their questions and answer them appropriately. But once again, it's your property. You have the ability to post it, and that should be the case. And I think when the police show up, they'll support you in that. So, thank you, Chief. Any other questions? Mail's all right, okay? Keep it up. Let's move on to reports and council and committee reports. Carla, could you start us off?
Unfortunately, I missed the last Solutions Committee. Don't really have a lot to tell other than the food hub now has the keys to the airport cafe. Some progress going there. More news in the future. That's about all I've got.
Thank you. Councilman Hancock?
I did attend the Solutions Committee meeting. I guess just, I think, had already kind of reported on this, so I don't know that there's really new information on it, but did have some discussion about, I guess, that, number one, we've been discussing recent incidents of selling to intoxicated persons. I think people understand that you're not allowed to provide alcohol as a business owner to people who are intoxicated. I think that's something that we're wanting to discuss and just kind of see how much of an issue it is, how much of an issue it isn't, see if that's something that we want to get involved in or not. That's just something that we've discussed right now. Another thing that we've been discussing, and I really appreciate this, is that we have had multiple events in the city with alcohol, and the whole city hasn't fallen apart, which is good. I think it's, and I know this sounds silly, but, you know, one of the things that we've discussed in the past, I think that the city council has discussed in the past, has been, you know, sometimes trying to limit that. We had City Park that we weren't allowing alcohol to be there whatsoever. I think we've moved past that a little bit with the idea of you can have alcohol in City Park, you just have to have a permit, which is what we've had really is the law all along, but just trying to move to that direction rather than just a complete restriction on it. And the chief noted that we have had plenty of events. I think we had the rodeo that had no incidents, the Fremont County Fair concert, alcohol had been allowed there without incidents, and Alive at 5 has been going well. Two of them. And I think the last one, I didn't attend the last one, but we didn't have a beer garden. Is that correct, or how did it work exactly?
Your Honor, that is correct. I talked to Rowena and just told her that my view was that we should kind of try to open it up a little bit. So we did not have a standard beer garden for the last two. They were allowed to kind of move freely with the alcohol.
But the idea was they couldn't leave the park.
The park.
With the alcohol.
That is correct.
Okay. So I guess the point is, I think we're maybe moving to an area where things are going well with that. I think the enforcement in the park is definitely appreciated, and I appreciate the chief doing that. I would note randomly as we were driving by City Park, my wife was looking out and saw smoke coming from the park, and I said, "That's just steam. That's a sprinkler or something." She insisted I go and check it when it was right in the middle, and it's hard to get to the middle of that park. I just want this noted. It's not that far, but I had to walk all the way over there, and lo and behold, there was a fire in the park. Somebody must have thrown a cigarette butt or something in the middle of the play area.
And the wood chips.
The wood chips were burning. And I say fire, I mean, it was really kind of like a hay fire where it's just, you know, smoldering there and that kind of thing. And I just wanted to say that when I called the police, number one, the minute I said the word fire, I heard the alarm going off. She didn't wait for an explanation as to whether there were flames. All of a sudden, I hear the fire alarm going off. And we had officers there right away. Now, mind you, they didn't think it was a good idea to use a fire extinguisher on it or anything because they wanted to get the fire crews there. So we just sat there and watched it burn for a little bit, which it was fine. Trust me. I mean, it wasn't like it got out of control. But I did want to compliment, number one, that dispatch was very quick to respond and get fire crews there. the minute I said the word fire. And then number two, that our officers were quick to get there, look at the situation, and figure out the best move. And they were very kind, of course. I knew them with my job and everything. But so just a note, they're very willing to respond to the park and deal with issues, whether it be some burning wood chips or somebody who's drunk and being a nuisance. So anyway, I think things are working very well going forward into the future. And I think that that was something that we talked about at Solutions as well. The last thing I would say is that at Solutions was when we not at Solutions. I've been meeting with a separate group where we're talking about the idea of getting a inpatient treatment facility in Riverton. That was the day before Solutions. And we had actually discussed that and trying to move forward with ideas and figure out possibilities, if it even is a possibility. And that's where the National Recovery Month proclamation came from, was some folks that worked at White Buffalo had noted that September is National Recovery Month, and that has been getting some traction around the nation. It's been going on for 30 years, and it's just the idea of, having events or talking about and celebrating recovery. And I do think, a lot of time when we're addressing public intoxication or drug abuse, one thing that we need to be doing is arresting them, getting out of that situation, making it so that we have a safe community. But another thing we need to be keeping in mind is down the road, how are we going to get out of this? They can't just spend the rest of their lives in prison or jail or whatever. And they do need to be given tools if they make that choice towards recovery. And I just note that I celebrate a lot of people that have gone through this. I have good friends that have gone through treatment. I have people that I've frankly prosecuted that have gone through treatment that I still talk to, and they still talk to me, which is interesting. But a lot of people that have gone through it. And so for all these people that we see and get discouraged about that, I just wish they could get sober, there's a lot of them out there that are doing that. And I think that's partly what National Recovery Month is about, is understanding and saying people are doing this and they can do it. And so I just wanted to say that and celebrate recovery. And I think there's a lot of people that have been able to make that, and I hope that we can recognize that where we see it. So that's all. That's lengthy, and I apologize, but that was my report.
Thank you. Mike?
Again, I think it's amazing the amount of difference we've made in the park and how much better it is, and how we have had events where alcohol's been present and people have been responsible and done things the way they're supposed to. And so I think it's great, and I think it's been an improvement to Riverton, and people are excited for these events, and we're getting a better turnout at these concerts and all this kind of stuff. So I think it's great. I did get called by a citizen, and I think some other members did too. We have sort of pushed some of the problem in City Park out to other areas in town, and I've brought it up to Eric, and I think he's taking care of this. But I guess my main thing is when people see something going on that shouldn't, and whether it's somebody soliciting door to door or somebody doing something that they shouldn't be in public, that they need to make sure they call the police. Because I've talked to multiple people and they go, well, this was going on. I says, well, did you call the police? And they said, no, I just didn't think they would come, or what. Well, they can't come unless you call them. And the more we call them, the more attention they're going to give to the issues that are going on, and it's going to get better. And so us focusing our energy on City Park, for example, has made it better. And so we need to make sure we're focusing our energy on the other things that go on in town that shouldn't be. And whether that's a loose dog or, somebody passed out under a tree somewhere else other than City Park. And so I think we can all do a better job of reporting the things so that the police can go do their job, and long-term, that's going to help Riverton be a better place to live. And the main thing I took out of Tim's oration was, he listened to his wife, and she was right.
It happens.
And that's true most of the time. So that's a very good example to be set.
Be careful.
It was a lesson.
There you go.
You're married.
I'm married, and I stand by that. I'd like it publicly put in the paper that I listen to my wife, and she's right most of the time.
Thank you.
That motion?
And a second to that? Councilman Larson?
have nothing. Tim took all of my steam.
It was smoke, not steam.
Councilman Rhoda.
So I've got a couple things, Mayor. First thing I want to talk about is the Community Engagement Committee. Our big focus right now is the Winter Festival, which is going to be a 4-week-long festival in downtown Riverton. We do have a page on Facebook, so you're able to get on there and look at some more of the details as we release them. The other big thing we're looking at is the all-class reunion for Riverton High School. That's going to be July 17th and 18th next year. And they're going to try to do it every 5 years, I believe is what it is, and it'll be 2025, 2030, and it'll basically be a high school reunion for all alumni from Riverton, be it, past students or just parents of past students. And if you're looking for more information on that, they have a Facebook page, as well as Julie Bowler would be the one to contact on that. We do still have Kick and Trash. We did the Good Samaritan Center last Thursday. We'll be doing Webwood this Thursday. So we hope to see everybody there. We do that at 4 o'clock. It usually takes about an hour of time. The rec board, we didn't have a meeting there. They tried to meet at the same time as us, so Kyle and I weren't able to make it, of course. The last thing I wanted to talk about is Mr. Officer Jim Donahue. So the first thing I want to do is I went to Ocean Lake this weekend, and I took my side-by-side up there, and one of my straps blew up. So the whole thing came off the trailer. So Jim Donahue came and helped me out. He really helped me out of a pickle right there. I didn't know who to call. It was like 6:30 in the morning. I was trying to get to work, and he came at the right time, and he was my hero that day. So huge shout out to Officer Jim Donahue. During that, not during that, I was also reading the weekly report, and I seen that he is now the highest rated instructor in Krav Maga. Is that correct?
Krav Maga.
Krav Maga. Could you explain that a little bit, what that is?
Krav Maga is the Israeli martial arts. It's a fighting system. There's no traditionalism to it. As you know, the Israelis, the way they live, they're constantly in battle. And so they came up with this fighting system. It's a hand-to-hand combat. And so Jim Donahue, he's one of our officers, he is the highest ranked Krav Maga instructor in the state of Wyoming and in the state of Montana. And then he also teaches for the state of Wyoming, probation and parole, Department of Corrections, obviously the Riverton Police Department. He also just held a kind of a symposium a couple weeks ago in Green River, and he teaches basically law enforcement officers and military.
So very neat. I seen that, and I wanted to put that little plug in for him as well. So give him my congratulations. And a huge shout out to Jim. You're doing a great job with that guy.
Thank you.
Mayor, that is all I have at the moment.
Councilman, what time do you go kick and trash?
4 o'clock.
4 o'clock. And you're going to meet at Webwood, or where?
At the Sundowner.
At the Sundowner, okay. I would encourage anybody that can get away. Those are a lot of fun. The people that do that enjoy it, and it's a nice thing to do.
Mayor, one thing I do want to add, with the Community Engagement Committee, another thing we're looking into right now is more volunteers in the Riverton area. There's a couple people that have some projects and are looking to get some help. So we're looking for any people that are willing to volunteer in Riverton. If you are, reach out to myself. Rebecca Schatza can also get you pointed in the direction of some of the other organizations. So that is another thing we really want to start pushing for, is to get a little bit, a couple volunteers, so it's not always the same people lighting the ring of fire.
Yeah. That is really important. We appreciate that. City Administrator's report. You thought I was going to jump you, didn't you?
Well, tonight you could have, Your Honor, because I was going to report on some of the community engagement work. We will be working with Cameron Faring, trying to get some of the, make sure all those permits get through. It's likely the council will hear about that in person. It looks like a pretty impressive festival. If you have a chance, please do go to the website, because, or to the Facebook page, because I think it's going to be a really neat, extensive festival, and I think it's going to have a lot of really great parts to it. So we're looking forward to helping with that. And we have received a few other calls over the last month or so about different permits that need, and we're happy to help people. We understand, the thing I guess I'd use this moment for is, we understand that there are permits with regard to occupying Federal and Main Street. That is something that we are working on. The mayor's been working on it. I've been working on it. Staff has been working on it. We're having that conversation. It doesn't move quickly, but it does move. But we are happy to help try to get anybody through that, help them with that process. We understand it. Please give us a call and let us do so. We would be very happy to do so. And we will be working with Cameron and the Winter Festival and anybody else who comes forward and is seeking to do that. We can try to help get that forward. Other than that, Your Honor, we have RECDA on the 25th, and Force Committee will meet on the 9th, next week. And that is all.
Thanks, Tony. Appreciate it. A couple things that came up in your reports that I could help on. I had the opportunity, it'll be 2 weeks tomorrow, to sit through court all the way through it. I got kind of hoodwinked into that, but it was a real good experience for me. And what I would like to report back is that our judge, she is good at what she does. And there were 30-some cases there, and we had officers involved. There's 5 people transported from county over to our court that's behind the wall. And Judge McGee did an excellent job all the way through that, and I would like to commend her and her staff. There are 6,200 pending cases in that courtroom of different levels. And it's just amazing of how much work that they do. And as I sat there, the thing that impressed me is that she told everybody that had an alcohol violation that they could not be in City Park or on the bike paths. And so it's a joint effort from everywhere we go of people doing their very best to help us improve Riverton. And I would really like to give her a shout out for that. And the other thing that is, I need staff to go to work on and come back to us. I just today was asked about volunteerism, and as Corey brings that up, in the past, the Riverton Fire Department has had the opportunity to receive their water for free if they were on the fire department. I don't know if that's true or how long ago that was. If we could do some research on that and come back and tell me, I told them because it was an enterprise fund, we couldn't mess with those dollars. And it was a great answer. I explained it really well. And yet, if we want volunteerism, we're better to start with those guys that Tim calls and they show up. And so, we might look into that and see if there's something that we could encourage and enhance people to volunteer. That's really what Riverton needs. That's what Fremont County needs. It's probably what the nation needs, is more people to volunteer and to come out and to participate and to get in the Republican Party, get in the Democratic Party. Pepper's here tonight, and so it doesn't pay well, does it? Pepper and I have had that same job. It doesn't pay extremely well, but we need those volunteers. We really do, in almost everything that we do. There's a wonderful article on the front page of the paper adjacent to my article that wasn't so good about the new uranium exhibit in the library. And I couldn't believe when the article said that the library had been there for 50 years. I just got out of high school. I don't understand that. But if staff would look into that and see if we could do something, if that was a reality or not. I had a conversation with the sheriff about the jail space. He is in our court and working really hard for us, and we've got some things underway to work on that with the chief and Tony and I. I met with Senator Enzi's people out of Cody. They're working hard to accomplish those things also. I met with IDEA Inc. about the BLM meeting. Tony and I went and did that, and that was a good meeting also this last little bit. Anything that you can do to encourage and enhance people to get behind the Athon permit, would suggest to you would be a wonderful idea for the city of Riverton. It's a lot of jobs to consider. I also went to the FTAG meeting. FTAG is looking for a volunteer right now that we would like to turn a name in for someone that would like to volunteer for one or two people out of the Riverton community to be on a committee that would make recommendations on the census and try to open doors and make that work in Fremont County. That's being put together through FTAG. I talked with Commissioner Becker, had a good long talk with him. Taxes is a real problem in Fremont County. And I see the nod from Ernie. He and I run in some tight circles, and we need some enhancement dollars in Fremont County. And the legislature is running out of money, and they're tightening up the purse, and we're trying to get our hand in the top. And I am not for taxation. I realize everybody will be opposed to such a thought, but taxation, we need our airport, we need our transportation, we need our bus service. And so think about those things as you mull those over. We had an interesting, I saw an article on County 10 about our meeting with the middle school, and quite lengthy conversation, probably longer than the meeting was. And what they're hoping to do is merge our 7th graders into the University of Wyoming and work alongside the landfill remediation. And what we're hoping to do is not set off any bombs, but enhance the education of our 7th graders to maybe some of them would want to work in those fields and help us with those things. I also met in another meeting with Idea Inc. Tony was at that one also, about the Riverton Medical Group, and that was a good meeting. I also had a drive-through with, Eric escaped us. We tried to find him, but we took everybody else, and we had a lot of fun. We wished he was there. But we went down to All Nations Trailer Court, and we had a drive-through to look at the problems that we have in All Nations, which are many. And before we got there, our police department beat us, and the chief had already sent out guys to tag vehicles. And there's a number of vehicles that need to be hauled away. And so I already had on my phone, when I got back, phone calls to ask me why we were tagging vehicles. But we're working hard at that. Any suggestions, and I would encourage you, council members, to take a drive through All Nations and see what you think, and get back to me with things that you would think we could do there. That's all I have. We do have an executive session tonight. The chair would entertain a motion to convene into executive session for the purpose of litigation, consider litigation which our governing body is or may be at party in accordance with Wyoming Statute 16-4-405A.
Romanette.
Romanette
I don't remember what the number was.
3.
3.
Romanette 3.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Bailey and a second by Councilman Hancock. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion passes. We stand convened in executive session at 8:47. Tony, you and Kristen, anyone else?
Right now.
The chair would invite Tony and Kristen to the executive session. Councilman Bailey is the motion, and Tim, you want the second?
One way or the other.
I was already writing the M. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion passed. regular session of City Council is now reconvened at 9:18. 9:18. Is there any action needed, Tony?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Councilman Bailey has the motion. Councilman Hancock has the second. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion passed. This meeting of the Riverton City Council stands adjourned at 9:18. Thank you.